Hello, good morning and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one-stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to another session of the Hindu News Analysis dated 16th of August 2024. Now, before we start off with looking at the list of the topics, here is a question that I have for you. Think of this and at the end of the session, I'll give the answer to you. All of you can see a picture of the garlic. Now the question is, what do you think garlic is? Is it a vegetable or is it a spice? Some of you might be thinking, sir, what is the importance of this question? Is it relevant for civil services examination? My dear, it is relevant. Very recently, the Madhya Pradesh High Court has given an order, has issued a judgment regarding whether the garlic is the vegetable or is it a spice? What do you think is the answer? Just keep a thought on it. I'll let you know the answer at the end of the session. Now, let's have a look at the topics today. The first article, the editorial in Hindu newspaper, international edition, Obstinate refusal to focus on welfare. Second article, PM-KUSUM, digital platform has been announced. What is the PM-KUSUM? What is the issue? What are we trying to achieve using the initiative, etc. Third, controlling traffic causing air pollution. Important article where certain economic concepts as well as the ecology and environment plus geography concepts are discussed. Fourth article, new method to predict solar cycle amplitude, purely from geography perspective. Fifth one, dengue control, wMel strategy, important science and technology article. Sixth one, national pest surveillance system which was announced by the government yesterday. What is the importance of that? We'll understand. Seventh and eighth article from international page, why did Japan's Prime Minister step down? What are the issues surrounding the discussion of PM deciding not to opt for the selection or the election next month? Next, political turmoil threatens Thailand's economy. Two articles in international edition is given regarding Thailand itself. Let's try and understand. So these are the important articles that I'll be discussing today. Now before I go forward and start the discussion, many of you have basically posted a comment saying that, sir, there are so many important topics as well as the points that you discuss, but you don't write anything. You write very little in the slide. It becomes very difficult for us to, let's say, note down the points every time or remember the points. To make it easier for your preparation, wherever I feel certain important points are given in, let's say the newspaper article, I've given certain points in the slides itself. Now, if you want to download the PPT as well as attempt the daily quiz that we provide on day-to-day basis on the topics which have appeared in the newspaper, all you need to do is join our Telegram channel. Here is a QR code for the Telegram channel. Scan it. You'll be taken to a Telegram channel. Join. The PPT as well as the quiz on day-to-day basis will be uploaded in the Telegram channel. With that caveat, let me start the discussion. The first important article, editorial page. An obstinate refusal to focus on welfare. The government of India from the last couple of years has been talking about concept of inclusive growth, promotion of inclusive growth. In fact, earlier also when we implemented the concept of 5-year plans, in the 11th 5-year plan, the central theme was inclusive growth. The 12th 5-year plan again was inclusive growth. Even though we do not have 5-year plans right now, Government of India again and again basically talks about promoting inclusive growth. Now, those who do not know what is the idea of inclusive growth, I'll simply give you a definition and then go forward. The World Bank defines inclusive growth as the pace as well as pattern of the growth. Pace as well as pattern. That is, it will not only promote or focus on promotion of GDP growth rate, it will also talk about who is getting the benefit, whether the whole society is getting the benefit of the growth or only few of the people, or let's say certain percentage of population is getting the benefit of the growth. So if all the populations if all the sections of the society are getting the benefit of growth, we call this as inclusive growth. Now, to promote inclusive growth, the government every year allocates a certain amount of money to promote social welfare. Simple. There are a lot of social welfare schemes as well as objectives of Government of India, and in the annual budget or the union budget, whenever it is announced, government allocates a certain funds to promote social welfare. For example, government will allocate funds for promotion of employment, government will allocate funds for promotion of, let's say, rural growth and development, government will allocate funds for providing welfare for, let's say, certain indigent people or let's say senior citizens or very old people, that is through the concept of pensions. Government also spends a lot of money in promotion of education, and in the process of providing education, government will also ensure that certain sections of the children or let's say certain children at certain levels of education levels will be getting access to nutritious food as well. For example, we have Poshan scheme now. Earlier we had midday meals scheme which has been subsumed under the concept of a Poshan, PM-KUSUM scheme now. What the article basically discusses is, if you talk about the social welfare objectives of the government, government always harps on the idea of a promotion of social welfare. But when you compare the talk of Government of India to the allocations done by the Government of India in the recently presented budget for the current financial year, that is financial year 24 and 25, there is a mismatch. Mismatch in the sense, the authors are saying that it is very valid, it is a legitimate argument of the middle class household as well as the lower income households who have criticized the Government of India's budget, where sufficient amount of funds have not been allocated to achieve social welfare objectives. For example, right, if you want to understand, for example, what has been the allocations done by the Government of India under many of these initiatives. Let's start with the most important one, National Food Security Act, which has been implemented from 2013, which provides a food security, or to be very precise, legal entitlement. Under this act is provided. We have Antyodaya card holders, we have priority households who will be getting access to certain quantity of food grains. But if you look at how much has been the allocation of funds by Government of India under the National Food Security Act, the article says that the overall expenditure allocation as per the GDP number or compared to GDP numbers has fallen down to 0.63% of GDP for the current financial year, and last year it was 0.72% of GDP. Now, all of you please understand this. Many of the times whenever the government will talk about allocations, they generally talk in terms of absolute numbers. That is basically the argument is, government says I have allocated, let's say hypothetically 1000 crore rupees. But rather than looking at the absolute numbers, it always makes a sense to compare these numbers to GDP numbers and find out with the change in the GDP have the allocations changed or reduced or have remained the same. I hope you understand this. Compare that with the GDP. It always makes better sense, because the argument is, if the GDP is expanding, government revenues are also generally seen to be expanding, because with higher production, higher sales, higher tax receipts are earned by the government. Having said so, right, understand this, what has the Government of India done in terms of proportionate change when you compare that with the GDP? Is the government changing in the same percentage or is it reducing, etc.? So, compare that with the GDP number rather than simply looking at absolute expenditure allocations. So, one point that has been mentioned by the authors here is the NFSA, which is a very important scheme, welfare program of Government of India, which provides food entitlement to more than 80 crore people. The allocation under this scheme has actually been reduced from 0.7% of GDP to 0.63% of GDP. Now, I know some of you will basically say, but sir, it also makes a sense, because earlier the Government of India used to provide lot of food grains, hence the food subsidy used to be higher. But with the revamping of the subsidy schemes, that is Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, being brought under basically the NFSA now, the food subsidy should reduce. Very valid argument. But if you look at what has happened over a period of time, rather than looking at only the last 2 years, if you just see what has happened to the food subsidy over a period of time, you will observe over a period of time, that is back in the year 2013 and 2014, the allocation of food subsidies as a percentage of GDP was around 0.8%. It increased to 0.9%. Thereafter, you will see a declining trend. And during the pandemic, because of the announcement of Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana under the Atmanirbhar Package 2020, the allocation as a percentage of GDP skyrocketed to 2.7%. And thereafter, again you are seeing a consistent decrease in the allocation as a percentage of GDP. So 0.72 last year, 0.63% this year, that is the budgetary allocation. So the argument of the authors is Government of India is not doing sufficient, not allocating sufficient amount of funds to provide welfare through food entitlement. Point number 1. Point number 2, there is also MNREGA, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. Under this, 100 days of wage opportunities are provided for rural population. At least one adult, every household will be provided with 100 days of wage opportunities. What is the allocation under MNREGA? If you look at the allocation under MNREGA, let me show it to you in a different graph here. If you look at the allocations under MNREGA, it has been declining over a period of time, and in 2024 and 25 there is a slight lift. But if you look at the larger picture, that is for a longer duration, that is let's say from 2013, 2014 and 15 to 23 and 24, you will see that consistently there has been a decline in the allocation of the funds of MNREGA. Now, some of you might be thinking, what is the use of it? Agreed, you have given multiple graphs, we will have a look at it. But what is the use of all of this information? My dear, very simple. In recent times, there is a discussion regarding rural distress. That is, in case of a rural economy, there is no sufficient demand for goods and services. And that is generally associated with not sufficient amount of incomes or let's say revenues that are earned by the households. Now you tell me, if the allocation under MNREGA reduces, if the allocation under let's say NFSA keeps on reducing, don't you think this will further add to the distress in the rural part of India? And if you look at the census population, most of India's population resides in the rural part of India. So there is already a concern regarding the distress, and this will further add to the distress in the rural part of India. That is a very important inference that you need to draw. In fact, in the article they say that whatever was the allocation for let's say MNREGA as well as NFSA back in the year 2014, that is the first year of the current government, 10 years ago, if you compare that allocation to the allocations done in 24 and 25, that is the current financial year, the allocations for both of the schemes has come down by around 25%. The allocation for both of the schemes has come down by around 25%. So that's a second very important point. Third one, there is also a welfare program by the name of National Social Assistance Program, NSAP. Under National Social Assistance Program, under NSAP, basically government will provide certain amount of welfare payments, transfer payments in the form of pensions are done to certain sections of the society. For example, the person is very old person, the household does not have any person who is a bread earner, or let's say a old widow, right? So generally these kind of women or let's say other beneficiaries are identified. So the welfare payment of 200 rupees in certain cases and 300 rupees in certain other cases is transferred by Government of India. What has been the allocation under the current year's budget? The allocation is 9,652 crore rupees. And if you see this, this is around 14 or 16 crore rupees higher compared to previous year allocation, slightly higher compared to previous year. But if you adjust the allocations with inflation rate, because obviously from one year to next year, there will be inflation rate. If you adjust these allocations with inflation rate, the increase in the allocations, most of it will be nullified because of the inflation rate. Point number one. And if you are thinking, sir, what is the importance of adjusting with inflation? Imagine you will provide 200 rupees for a person as a beneficiary under this. Now this 200 rupees, they will not be able to purchase the same quantity of goods and services compared to last year when you adjust for inflation. So adjustment with inflation is done here. The authors are saying sufficient amount is not being transferred. Second, the amount that is transferred under this 200 rupees and 300 rupees in certain cases has not been changed for many years. It has remained the same for many years now. So Government of India, if they want to truly provide welfare for the poorest sections of the society or certain sections of the society, we will have to increase the allocation, at least change it along with, let's say, inflationary trends. That is another very important point mentioned here. Next one, malnutrition. According to the data that is provided by the, let's say, the minister on the floor of the parliament, if you look at the data that is provided, the minister has stated that, minister has admitted in the parliament that more than 50% of the children in India under the age of 5 basically suffer from chronic malnutrition. They are not able to get access to sufficient amount of nutrition in India. And not only this, if you look at the mortality or let's say anemia rates, the anemia rates in Indian women and children are 20 to 15% higher compared to global standards. Now, how do you address the malnutrition issue? Government of India earlier used to provide initiative, under this initiative, food for the children who are going to school by the name of midday meals scheme. And with the launch of PM-KUSUM initiative, the midday meals scheme has been brought under the PM-KUSUM, and the allocation to the PM-KUSUM for the current financial year is 12,467 crore rupees. 12,467. Now, if you compare that with the previous year, the budget estimates were revised and they were revised downwards. Budget estimates were somewhere around 12,000 crore rupees. These were revised downwards to around 10,000 crore rupees. That is specifically 10,000 crore. Now, if you compare with the revised estimates, no doubt allocations are higher. But again, the question arises, are we doing sufficient? For example, earlier there was one report that was sent to the finance ministry wherein it was proposed that under the midday meal scheme we have been able to see very good gains in terms of enrollment, in terms of improvement in the nutrition access to the school children. So if you want to improve this further, why don't we provide even the breakfast to the school children as it is done by some of the states in India? The finance ministry is said to have rejected this proposal on account of low availability of funds. The finance ministry has stated that we do not have sufficient funds for this, so let's not implement this right now. So the argument here is, when Government of India can reduce corporate taxes, but I hope you understand there will be pros and cons for this argument. I hope you understand this. Government of India back in the 2019 reduced the corporate tax rates. From 30%, the corporate tax rates were reduced to 22%. Many of the companies were given a choice. If you want to pay corporate tax at 22%, you can choose to pay 22% following certain conditions are applicable. So with the reduction in the corporate taxes from 30% to 22%, in the last many years, it is said that Government of India has lost a tax revenue of around 8 lakh crore rupees. Around 8 lakh crore rupees. So the argument of the authors is that rather than providing these kind of tax exemptions, why are we not collecting these taxes from the corporates and utilizing this for providing social welfare for the people? If you look at the performance of India in many of these indicators, for example, they have quoted the indicators such as let's say the Human Development Index, where India is ranked at 132nd position. When you talk about, let's say, the inequality in India, there was one report published very recently by World Inequality Lab by the title of Billionaire Raj in India, which says that the income inequality and wealth inequality has actually increased to such an extent that the inequality in India today is higher compared to what was the inequality during the British Raj period. So argument of the authors is, when the government can provide tax benefits to corporates And again, there are pros for that as well. Why don't we continue to impose same amount of tax, collect the money and use it for social welfare? Why is the government generally saying that they do not have sufficient amount of money for objective A, objective B or objective C under social welfare, where we need to promote social welfare to achieve inclusive growth at the end of the day. So these are some of the very important points. Before going forward, let me give you certain other points as well. Because when you look at the article, you will only get one side of the argument. What is the other side of the argument? It's not that Government of India has not spent sufficient amount of money in all the welfare schemes. There are certain welfare schemes which have been launched newly by the government. Allocations have been increased. For example, in the current budget, or let's say the budget for current financial year, Government of India has announced multiple schemes to promote employment. It has launched multiple schemes to provide welfare to the people. And in context of corporate taxes, understand the objective of the government as well. No doubt that the government is open to the idea that, or has understood the argument that lot of tax receipts have been lost because of reduction in the corporate tax rate. But the objective with which Government of India had done this, that is reducing the corporate tax, was to attract lot of investment. This was a time period when many countries were looking at other countries apart from China to invest. Many companies were thinking of moving their, let's say, manufacturing base, and that was the time period when Government of India decided to reduce the corporate tax rate so that we'll be able to attract lot of foreign investment. So you'll have to be worried about, or you'll have to look at the other objectives as well, or the other arguments as well, rather than looking at only one-sided viewpoint. Okay, so these are certain important points which have been mentioned in the article. I've noted down these particular points here. Please use the PPT. I've also given certain graphical representations from different sources which basically talk about the same thing, that is a reduction in the allocation of multiple schemes which are used by the Government of India to promote welfare in India. So associated with this, here is your first MCQ assignment. Number 14. Consider the following statements regarding National Food Security Act 2013. There are 3 statements. Go through all the 3 statements. How many of these 3 statements are correct? Only 1, 2, 3, or none of them? Do let me know the right option in the comment section. Now, associated with the earlier MCQ assignments, that is the assignment that I gave you in my previous discussion. Number 13, which of the following are the factors behind divergence between CPI and WPI? What do you understand by the term divergence here? CPI and WPI, they do not move in synchronized way. You will never see that WPI and the CPI are always moving either upwards or downwards in synchrony like this. Sometimes you will see WPI will be moving upwards, CPI will move downwards. Sometimes WPI will be moving upwards like this and CPI will also move upwards. Sometimes WPI will enter into a negative territory. You will see CPI stagnating at around 4-5% like this. So what are the reasons why this kind of a divergence, difference in the movement is observed for both CPI as well as WPI? I've given you 4 points: base effect, base year, basket of commodities, weightage in the basket. All the 4 are absolutely correct. All the 4 are correct. Base year is different for both CPI and WPI. CPI 2012, WPI 11 and 12. Base effect, that will also have a huge influence whether WPI is higher, CPI is lower, etc. Third one, basket of commodities. In WPI, the manufactured commodities have a weightage of around 64%, whereas in case of the CPI, the food and beverages has the highest weightage of around 46%. So obviously the weightage or the basket of commodities and the weightage will also have a huge importance. Basket of commodities in WPI, services are not included. CPI, goods and services are included. In CPI, combined I am talking about, 299 articles are present. In WPI, 697 articles are present. Right? So these are the reasons or the causes why there is a divergence between both the CPI as well as WPI. Right option will be option D, all the 4 are correct. MCQ assignment number 12. Consider the following statements. SEBI allows covered and uncovered short selling in India. statement is wrong. SEBI allows only covered short selling. That is, you will have to purchase the you will have to purchase a security, not the government security, but you will have to purchase a security, and only then you are allowed to enter into short selling. If you do not have a security in your hand, that is called as uncovered, naked short selling. That is not allowed in India. Okay. Second, short selling is allowed only for the institutional investors and not for retail investors. Wrong. It is allowed for both of them. Short selling is allowed in BSE as well as NSE. Yes, it is allowed in both BSE as well as NSE. Only one of the statement is true. Right option is option A. Let me go forward with the next article now. Digital platform driven by drone mapping to revive a solar power scheme. Now, the scheme that they are talking about is a PM-KUSUM program, PM-KUSUM scheme. PM-KUSUM basically stands for Pradhan Mantri Kisan Urja Suraksha Evam Utthan Mahabhiyan. Hindi name, okay, PM-KUSUM initiative. What was the objective of launching this PM-KUSUM initiative? Understand this. Government of India back in the 2019 announced the concept of PM-KUSUM initiative. Under this, the objective was very simple. Government said there will be three components under the scheme. Component A, component B and component C. Three components. Under component A, we are going to promote renewable energy power plants of 500 kilowatts to 2 megawatts, which will be set up in the fields. Is it okay? 500 kilowatts to 2 megawatts to be set up in these particular fields. We are talking about, of course, agriculture fields here. Point number 2, that is the component B of the scheme. We are going to promote establishment of or installation of around 2 million standalone solar agriculture power pumps. That is basically the power pumps will be utilized or run by harnessing the sunlight. We will harness the sunlight, convert that into electricity. That electricity shall be utilized to run these solar pumps. And point number 3, there are already certain number of power pumps. We will solarize them. That is, we will convert them into solar, right? Let's say power pumps, and the target was 15 lakh or 15 million agriculture pumps. This was the basic 3-component initiative that was launched by the Government of India by the name of PM-KUSUM initiative. What were the objectives of the scheme? Why did we launch this particular scheme, and why there are concerns? Only one concern has been discussed here. I will go beyond that. What was the objective of the scheme? Point number 1. Generally, the farmers utilize diesel to run these irrigation pumps. And when you burn, right, let's say the diesel, when you consume diesel, one, obviously the dependence on the fuel will be very, very higher. And if the prices of the fuels will keep on fluctuating, that will have an impact on the farmer's expenditure. But more importantly, when you burn the diesel engine, emissions will be very, very high. Done? Emissions will be very high. So, Government of India said, I want to reduce the expenditure, reliance on the diesel, and I also want to reduce the emissions that will be caused because of the irrigation pump. Second one, if you install the solar pumps, the farmer will be able to harness the sunlight and utilize this sunlight, convert that into electricity and use the electricity for running the solar pump. But much more importantly, under this initiative, government also stated, if you have produced surplus electricity at a particular tariff, at a particular price, you will be able to sell this electricity to the DISCOM and you will be able to earn money. So, even increased earnings of the farmers was also very, very important objective. So, additional revenue, solar energy production, reduction of emission as well as employment generation. How there is employment generation here? Imagine I am a farmer, I want to install these kind of equipments in my, let's say, farming land. I will purchase this equipment. There will be somebody who will come to my farm, install the equipment. So, there will be certain demand for the people who will be able to manufacture these products, sell these products, they will come to the farm, they will install it, they will provide the service as well. So, there will be certain generation of employment when this initiative PM-KUSUM will be launched. So, it has been multiple years since the launch of the initiative, and Government of India now says we have not been able to achieve the targets. We have not been able to achieve the target. As of the June, what is the amount of, let's say, the targets we have been able to meet? 257 megawatt of power plants have been established, and the target was how much? 10,000 megawatt, totally 10,000 megawatt. So, we have been able to hit 256 megawatt, right, very far away from the target. Second, 3.9 lakh solar pumps have been installed, and the third one, 13,500 pumps have been solarized. And if you compare these with what were the targets set up by Government of India under PM-KUSUM, we are very, very far away. And what are the reasons? Right? I hope you understand. What are the reasons why we are not able to meet these particular targets? According to article, they have discussed only one problem. Let me go beyond that. First very important problem is the issue of land availability. Land availability. And I hope you understand the problem of land availability. In case of India, more than 86% of the farmers, according to the agriculture census of 15 and 16, more than 86% of the farming is small and marginal. And when you say it is small and marginal, it essentially means you are cultivating on a piece of land up to 2 hectares. Marginal is up to 1 hectare, more than 1 up to 2 is called as small. More than 86% of the farming is done on small and marginal, which also means the number of land pieces, number of land parcels or pieces are also very, very high in India. And this is one of the outcomes of various initiatives, or let's say various things that have taken place in the Indian society in the past, that is technically referred to as land fragmentation. Land fragmentation. What is the idea of a land fragmentation? A single piece of land will be broken down into multiple pieces, and that is generally seen in your family. You must have seen, right? When, let's say, your great grandfather would be having, let's say, one piece of land. If they have, let's say, 2 siblings, or let's say 2 sons or 2 children, I am using the term son because generally that is used in case of India. I don't support it, by the way, okay. So, if they have 2 children, one piece of land will be broken down into 2, and if these 2 people have 2 more children, 2 pieces will become 4 pieces, so on and so forth. So, the land fragmentation has actually led to reduced average piece of land in India. At one point of time, we had an average piece of land for cultivation purposes, it was more than 2 hectares. Now, according to the agriculture census, which is conducted once every 5 years, please remember, once every 5 years, it is just around 1 hectare, 1.08 hectare if you want to be very precise. And again, this is according to the census that was conducted in 2015 and 16, by the way. So, argument is, when you have land fragmentation, multiple pieces of land are created, it is very difficult to get, let's say, only one large piece of land where you want to install these kind of, let's say, the PM-KUSUM initiative, or let's say projects under PM-KUSUM. That's the first very important problem. And understand, this is only problem that is discussed in the article. But let's go beyond this. What are the other problems? Why are we not able to achieve the targets under PM-KUSUM? Second very important concern is cost. The cost of the project. If I want to install an, let's say, a solar pump, if I want to install, right, a standalone project or solar power units under this, the initial cost that I will be bearing will be very, very high. And not all the banks are willing to provide credit or the loan under these initiatives. That's a second very important concern. Third very important concern is availability of equipments, availability of the motors here. Until now, please understand, the Government of India says according to guidelines, the state government will estimate how many farmers are there under this initiative. Those will be covered, and the state government used to put up a demand, used to order the motors which will be given to farmers under this, which will be sold to the farmers under this. But this led to a lot of delays. Now, Government of India very recently in the month of April has issued a notification that they want to change the system. Rather than state government putting an order for these pumps, central government says we will set up a portal. We will set up a website where all these authorized dealers are present. Farmers can log on to the portal. According to their requirement, they can place an order for solar pumps under this. So, as of now, this is also one more concern. Next one more issue that has been raised by various experts is that under PM-KUSUM, you want the farmer to harness solar energy, convert into electricity and use it to draw out water. No doubt, positive outcome will be able to reduce the dependence on the electricity that will be produced through coal, will be able to harness the sunlight, etc. But on the other side, don't you think if farmer produces more of electricity now, they'll keep on using the pumps to draw water from the earth, the parts of the earth? Already the concern is that in many parts of India, the cultivation is done in such a way that it is not sustainable. The land there does not have sufficient water, water table has gone, it has dropped, and the farmers are cultivating water intensive crops in such a land. And they are simply drawing more and more water, which is further reducing the availability of water, reducing that water table. Now, if you allow the farmers to harness the sunlight, convert that into electricity, they will be drawing out more and more water. Don't you think this will in fact have a huge impact and further reduce the water table levels in these regions? So, these are some of the concerns which have been raised regarding the implementation of PM-KUSUM scheme. But in the article, apart from only one issue, they have basically stated that they are creating a digital platform where they are using drone technology to map out land parcels, and using this digital platform, now they will be able to identify where, in which region they will be able to find larger parcels of the land, larger pieces of the land where the installation of projects under the PM-KUSUM can be done. So, these are certain important points regarding the initiative of PM-KUSUM. Please make a note of this. Now, associated with this, one more assignment, MCQ assignment number 15. Consider the following statements. Agriculture census is conducted once every 10 years along with the population census. Second statement, average size of land holding in India is 2 hectares. Which is the right option? Do let me know in the comment section. If you do not know, please do join my next session. Whenever I take, I will discuss both of the MCQs. Let me go forward to the next article. How can traffic which causes air pollution be controlled? How can we reduce the air pollution which is done by the vehicles in India? Certain very important points. First one, India has a large number of cities wherein the pollution, that is air pollution, is very, very high. For example, in the article itself it is given, India houses 83 out of 100 most polluted cities in the world. India houses 83 of the most polluted 100 cities in the world. And not only this, the article also says around 2.1 million people, die because of the pollution that is caused in India. If you are wondering, sir, how can people die because of the pollution? I will just give you one example. Higher pollution, if I inhale such air, obviously I will face a certain respiratory diseases, and if this is very severe, it can even cause to death of the person. So, argument is, one, it is not only having a huge impact on image of India, it will also cause a lot of deaths in India. And one of the reasons why there is a lot of pollution in India is because of transportation. Remember this. One of the reasons why there is a lot of pollution in India, it is because of transportation. And if you are wondering, 12% of the emissions in India, that is the CO2 emissions in India, are on account of transportation itself. And apart from this also, the Ministry of Roadways, Transportation and Highways, MORTH, in its survey has stated that around 60% of total transportation, that is freight transportation, around 60% of total freight transportation is done through road transportation in India, and around 85% of passenger transportation is again done through road transportation in India. And please understand, road transportation accounts for majority of the transportation, and it is one of the major causes of pollution. It also leads to a lot of emission of nitrogen oxides. And whenever you talk about pollution, the article talks about pollution in the form of particulate matter 2.5. Particulate matter 2.5. These are basically small matters. Particulate matter 10 is there, particulate matter 2.5 is there. And majority of the pollution in the form of particulate matter 2.5 is on account of transportation in India. And the problem with higher PM2.5, higher emission of NOx, higher emission of CO2 is that it will cause increase in average temperature. That is one of the outcomes. Second one is, when the pollution is very high and the air is filled with all of these pollutants, people who will inhale these pollutants, especially PM2.5. If you inhale PM2.5, these can go and settle into your lungs, and these are very small. These are so small droplets, these can even enter into a bloodstream, and which can cause a lot of, let's say, lung diseases, respiratory diseases, heart related ailments, etc. And these are the reasons why there is a lot of deaths in India. These are the reasons why these kind of emissions are causing more than 2 million deaths in India. Now question is, how do you reduce the emissions that will be caused because of transportation? How do you reduce it? The article discusses two very important initiatives. First one is CAFE, Corporate Average Fuel Economy, CAFE. The concept of CAFE, I'll just give a very brief idea regarding this. Under the CAFE, I'll use the term CAFE now, CAFE, okay. Under the CAFE, certain regulations will be imposed on car manufacturers in India. Mind you, this is applicable for car manufacturers. So under this CAFE initiative or the guidelines, the car manufacturers over a period of time will have to ensure that the vehicles that they are manufacturing, they will be much more efficient in terms of fuel consumption, they will consume lesser fuels, and as a result of this, the emissions will also be lesser. These are basically the objectives associated with CAFE. The announcement of CAFE was done back in the year 2017 and 2018. The first stage or the first phase of the program was implemented then. Second phase of the program was implemented from 22 and 23, that is after 22 and 23. And now there are two more sets of regulations which are supposed to be implemented. One from 27 to 32, that will be CAFE 3.0, and the next one will be CAFE 4, that will be implemented for 32, from 32 to 37. That is the year 2032 to 2037. Under CAFE 3, further reduction will be observed in case of emissions, that will be reduced from 113 grams per kilometer in the CAFE 2 to 91.7. In fact, if you look at the target for 22 and 23, that is second stage, the target setup was 113 grams per kilometer. But various experts have stated that the car manufacturers have not been able to meet the target, and they have been able to achieve somewhere around 106. They have been able to achieve somewhere around 106 grams per kilometer emissions, which is essentially meaning to say we have fallen short of the targets under the scheme or the stage 2 norms under CAFE. Having said so, under 3, we have further kept the lower target 91.7 grams, and under 4, it has been further reduced 70 grams per kilometer. Various arguments have been put forward, and experts are arguing that these are very much achievable in India. These are very much achievable. This is one initiative. Second initiative is, Government of India has announced a policy by the name of Vehicle Scrappage Policy. Vehicle Scrappage Policy. What is the argument of Vehicle Scrappage Policy? Imagine you have a very old car. You have a very old car. How old? Let's say 20-year-old. And by the virtue of being a very old car, the efficiency of the car will be very, very less. That is, it will consume lot of fuel, and when it consumes a lot of fuel, obviously emissions because of this car will also be very, very high. Emissions will also be very, very high. So what Government of India is saying is, in case of these kinds of vehicles, in certain cases 15-year and in certain cases 20-year-old vehicles, we will have to get a fitment certificate, that is whether the vehicle is fit for further usage or not. And if the authorities find that these vehicles are unfit to use now, certificate shall not be issued. And the owners of the vehicles will have an option. This is a tricky part. Owners of the vehicles will have an option. That is, it is basically optional for the owners, not compulsory. That they can simply sell it to basically for scrapping of the vehicle. Scrapping means destroying the vehicle, right? Dismantling the vehicle. And when I say destroy, it's not simply putting the vehicle on fire or lighting the vehicle on fire. No, the whole vehicle will be scrapped. That is dismantled into various components. What is the use of this? Government argues that if a vehicle is scrapped like this, let's say steel can be taken out, plastic can be taken out, various other minerals can be taken out, and these can be recycled, used again in the vehicles. So this will ensure that the raw materials, for making of the vehicle you require raw materials. Now the raw material availability will be ensured. That's the first very important point. Second very important point, the vehicles which are used, these are very old, emissions caused are very, very high. So if you scrap the vehicle, if you don't use the vehicle now, emissions that you will be doing or you will be contributing to the environment will also be lesser. Third one, government argues that it will also improve the fuel efficiency, and in addition to this, basically government says it will help us in controlling pollution, in reducing the pollution that will be contributed by these vehicles to the market. Having said so, please understand, in many of the states, the scrappage infrastructure, we do not have it. For example, in Karnataka, only in the last year, they have registered its first scrappage, the yard as such. In many of the states, even though they are announcing subsidies, for example, whenever you purchase a vehicle, you will have to pay road tax. Many states, more than 20 states by the way, have announced subsidization, that is reducing of the road tax if you opt for scrapping of the vehicle. That is basically the old vehicle will be scrapped and will be given certain, let's say subsidies in the form of lower road taxes. So these are some of the reforms that have been mentioned in the article. But let's go beyond this. In addition to these two reforms, what kind of other reforms can you write when you talk about, let's say, reducing vehicular pollution? Third very important reform, and please remember this, all of you heard of Government of India's initiatives to promote electric vehicles, correct? Government of India's initiatives to promote electric vehicles. For example, Government of India has implemented FAME initiative, faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles, FAME 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, etc. So FAME initiative can be written as one example here, that is a reform to reduce vehicular pollution. Second one, ethanol consumption. Ethanol, basically blending of ethanol. Government of India has been promoting ethanol blending, basically to ensure the biofuels are consumed and emissions as well as import dependence on the fossil fuels will also be reduced. So these are some of the reforms that you can write in order to say that Government of India has been promoting shifting away or let's say reducing the vehicular pollution in India. In fact, in addition to this, if you look at a larger picture, Government of India has also been promoting usage of more and more railways as a mode of transportation. For example, Government of India announced railway policy of 2030. Government of India has announced a railway policy for 2030. Under this policy, Government of India wants to ensure that by 2020, railways which accounted for 27% of freight transportation, by 2030 will start accounting for 45% of railway freight transportation. And if you compare between, let's say, road mode of transportation and railway mode of transportation, obviously railways is much more efficient. And wait a minute, some of you will be thinking, but sir, railways will also use energy, railways will also use let's say coal or let's say energy through fossil fuels, etc. Will that not add to contribution? My dear, Government of India has set up a target of achieving net zero emission by 2030 in case of railways. We want to make railways also a net zero emission entity. So, government is already taking care of emissions which are caused through railway sector. Done? So, these are certain very important points. Please be very careful. Next, Indian astronomers find a new method to predict amplitude of next solar cycle. What are the important points here? Understand this carefully. Sun has been formed because of accumulation of gases, and when these gases interact, when the gases will move at very high temperatures, obviously there will be certain electrical charge that will be issued. And the sun has a north pole as well as a south pole, just like the earth has. But over a period of time, generally there is a concept called as a solar cycle. Solar cycle generally says that once every 11 years, the north pole as well as the south pole of the sun will revert. That is, what was the north pole will become south and what was south will become north. So, there will be a reversion of magnetic fields in the sun. And when this kind of a reversion will happen in the magnetic field, it will also lead to certain outcomes. For example, there is a concept called as sunspots. There is idea called as a sunspot, solar flares, etc., etc. With inversion or let's say with reversion of these magnetic fields, it will also lead to higher sunspots or lessening of sunspots. Because please understand, whenever there is a inversion of the let's say the magnetic field, when suddenly the inversion happens, it is called as a solar minimal. That is, the sunspots are very, very less at this point of time. And as the sun moves away from this particular inversion period, that is, let's say it has happened in 2020, let's say, that will be year 1. And when you move away from the year 1 and start moving towards the year 11, when again the magnetic poles will inverse like this, in between, it is basically going to reach a position called as solar maximum, where the sunspots, that is basically eruptions of the gases will be very, very high. Again, after 11 years, will reach solar minimal. So, argument is, now this prediction of solar cycle, the understanding of the solar cycle is being done by using a new system which has been developed by Indian astronomers. And this has been developed at Indian Institute of Astrophysics, Kodaikanal Solar Observatory. Please remember, this is a factual information, can be asked in the prelims. It is done at India's Institute of Astrophysics, the solar observatory which is set up at Kodaikanal. And usage of this will also be done in order to study the intricacies of solar cycle as well as forecasting space weather. What is the idea of a space weather? With the change in the solar cycle, what will be the impact of it? What will be the impact of it? For example, whenever there are solar flares, generally it is stated that certain equipments or certain technology which we are using on the earth will be affected by it. Certain disruptions will be caused by it. And that is basically the study of the solar cycle as well as the forecasting of the space weather importance. The main components of space weather are basically the solar wind, coronal mass ejections and solar flares. And whenever these things will take place, let's say the communication system in India, there will be a small, in world, not just in India, in the world, disruptions we will be facing. Or let's say the power transmission will face a certain disruptions. Spacecraft electronics can face a certain disruptions. Even the astronauts who are there in the space, they will also be affected by all of these events. So, to predict the solar cycle, a new system has been developed at Indian Institute of Astrophysics. So, these are certain important points regarding the article here. Be very, very careful. Let me go to the next article. Dengue Control, the unrealized promise of Wolbachia infected mosquitoes. Lot of let's say scientific terminologies have been used here and lot of studies also have been mentioned. What you need to understand, let's go point by point. Point number one, in case of India, right, not only just in India, in many other countries as well, dengue is one of the issues. Whenever there is a rainfall or whenever the monsoon season will start, there is always a rising cases as well as deaths which are reported associated with dengue infection. Now, Government of India over a period of time has taken various measures to reduce the dengue cases, eradicate dengue as well. But even though we have taken so many measures, we have not been able to, so far, we have not been able to eradicate dengue in India. So, what can be done? What can be a next forward solution for India in order to achieve the eradication of dengue? The solution is discussed in the article. What is the solution? The article says that there is one strain of bacteria by the name of, right, Wolbachia. Understand this, there is one strain of bacteria by the name of Wolbachia, and this Wolbachia is generally found in the fruit flies and many other animals which are found in the forest. And what is the importance of this bacterial strain? If there is, right, let's say the viral infection, that is the one that causes dengue, if that virus infects this particular fruit fly, Wolbachia bacteria will protect. It has a certain immunity against this dengue virus. And many countries over a period of time, lot of studies have been conducted. Many countries such as let's say Singapore, Australia, Indonesia, etc., they have tried out a certain pilot projects wherein they have utilized this bacteria in order to control the spread of dengue cases. How so? There are two methods here, understand this. One is called as a population suppression and second one is called as a population replacement. For example, the authors are saying Singapore tried out population suppression and Australia has tried out population replacement. How is that possible? Let me give a very simple example here. Imagine you take a male, right, Aedes aegypti, that is a mosquito, and you will manipulate, basically you will introduce this bacteria into the cytoplasm of Aedes aegypti. That is introduced in the, right, let's say this particular the mosquito, the bacteria Wolbachia. Now, when these, right, male mosquitoes will mate with female mosquitoes, when newborn, right, let's say the newborn offsprings will not be done. Why? Because of this bacteria which is present in the male mosquito. This will essentially reduce the number of mosquitoes. This is called as a population suppression. This is called as a population suppression. On the other side, there is also population replacement. In case of population replacement, the mating will be allowed. That is when these new, right, let's say mosquitoes will be born. These mosquitoes will be born with Wolbachia bacteria, and because they have Wolbachia bacteria, the virus, dengue virus, will not be found in these mosquitoes. And even if it is found, it will be opposed basically because of the bacteria properties, the Wolbachia properties. The dengue virus will not be found in these, right, let's say the mosquitoes. So, over a period of time, those mosquitoes which do not have bacteria will be replaced with those which have bacteria, and this will help in reducing the spread of dengue in the country. And this second method was actually tried out by Australia, and they have seen that the results or the outcomes are really helpful in controlling the spread of dengue as such. In case of India, this is technically called as a wMel strategy. In case of India, right now we do not have any active wMel mosquito release program. It was tried out earlier, tried in the sense it was proposed earlier, but so far we have not implemented it. But very recently, the Indian Council for Medical Research, ICMR, Indian Council for Medical Research, has announced that in the northeastern parts of India, they are found naturally in certain mosquitoes, that is Aedes family mosquitoes, which are generally the carriers of the dengue virus. They will also cause chikungunya. The bite of them will cause chikungunya, right? So, I hope you understand this. in some of these Aedes mosquitoes in the northeastern part of India, the bacteria has been found naturally as such. Right. So, these are certain very important points regarding what policy or let us say what strategy can we use to control the spread of dengue and basically move over a period of time to eradicate dengue from India. In addition to this, please have a look at the first point as well. Because of the dengue, the number of deaths are very high in India. I have already told you the data. But not just that, the article also says that because of this, the economic cost annually in India, is 28,300 crore rupees. 28,300 crore rupees. That is the economic cost of dengue annually. For example, government will have to develop lot of infrastructure to take care, right, that let us say dengue will not spread. Government will have to, right, let us say conduct certain activities so that the mosquitoes will not be growing in certain places. And even if I fall ill because of dengue, I will not be able to contribute to economic activity. So, overall the economic cost of dengue annually in case of India is pegged at 28,300 crore rupees, such a humongous number. Next article, Center launches new AI based surveillance system to manage pest. Now, in case of India, please understand, very recently, that is yesterday, Government of India, that is Ministry of Agriculture, announced a new system by the name of National Pest Surveillance System, NPSS, National Pest Surveillance System. What is the use of the system? Point number 1, please understand, under GS paper 3, you have science and technology, you also have agriculture. Whenever there are certain questions asked, multiple years there are certain questions asked wherein they are linking both of them, that is science and technology as well as agriculture sector. For example, there was one question asked earlier, how can science and technology be used to improve the livelihood of the farmers? And this is one example of such application of technology in the agriculture sector. Farmers, whenever they cultivate, one problem that they generally face is the issue of pest, rodent, etc. Now, in order to address this particular issue in a much effective manner, by using technology, by making it easier for the farmers to get access to experts, Government of India has launched a new initiative called as National Pest Surveillance System, NPSS. Under the National Pest Surveillance System, the model is very simple. Imagine I am a farmer, I see a pest in my field, or I see certain crops which are being affected because of the presence of the pest. What I will do is, I will download the app, I will use this app to take a photo of this plant or a pest and I will send the photo. Now, this photo will be sent to experts. This photo will be sent to the experts who will provide right, let us say, advice to the farmer. And this is important because I as a farmer may not be able to understand what is the actual problem here. I might be dependent on, let us say, a pesticide retailer in the market who may or may not provide right information to me. And if the pest supplier, right, is worried about his revenue, he might end up selling unnecessary pesticide also to me in the process earn a huge amount of revenue. So, the farmer needs to understand what is the issue, right, what kind of pest it is and what level the pest has already reached in the farm, that is in the cultivation process, what is the impact of it and what should be the right process I should follow now, what steps should I take now in order to address the attack of the pest. And all of these are possible with the introduction of the National Pest Surveillance System, right. So, please have a look at the points here. NPSS is AI powered, artificial intelligence powered, which will help the farmers to connect with the agriculture scientists and get the assistance of the scientists to address the issue of the growth of the pest in the farms. Okay. So, these are certain important points regarding this new initiative of Government of India launched yesterday itself. Be very careful. Last two articles related to international events. First one, why did the Prime Minister of Japan step down? Right? Why did he announce that he will not be, right, he will not be running for, or he will not be continuing as a Prime Minister after a certain time period now. And second article related to Thailand. Let me give a very brief outline here. In case of Japan, please understand, the Prime Minister, that is Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, on 14th August stated that he would be stepping down as a leader of the Liberal Democratic Party, LDP, Liberal Democratic Party. And this, many experts say, was almost expected for a very simple reason. When he was elected as the Prime Minister, first as a leader of LDP, then as a Prime Minister, basically there were a lot of expectations. And his approval ratings were also very, very high. His approval ratings were somewhere around 50%. And over a period of time, because of his handling of the economy, because of dissatisfaction of the households regarding certain policies of the government, regarding certain scams that have taken place in the government itself, his approval ratings have kept on declining. As per the recent approvals, his rating, that is approval rating, has fallen down to somewhere around 15%, one of the lowest amongst the global leaders. Now, what are the issues? What problems happened during his tenure which resulted in Prime Minister deciding to quit the position as a Prime Minister? First one, when he became the Prime Minister, it was during pandemic times, the Prime Minister announced a new policy by the name of New Capitalism. Under the policy of New Capitalism, the government announced that they would be targeting new type of investments. They would be taking social welfare as one of the very important themes. They would ensure that population will be skilled, more type of investments would be attracted, etc., etc. But during the course of the last 3 years, what has actually happened is, in case of Japan, the inflation rate has started increasing. Inflation rates have started increasing. Though the wages which are provided by the Japanese companies, the wages also have increased. In fact, in case of Japan, the historical wage hike, the hike in the wages have been very conservative, very, very conservative. But in recent times, many companies also have announced wage hikes of more than 5%. Even though the wage hikes have been much higher compared to historical averages, many experts say this hike in the wages was not sufficient for the households to adjust for increased cost of living. Inflation was much higher, the cost of living was much higher, and even though the hikes were made, this was not sufficient. In addition to this, the domestic currency took a hit. The domestic currency started depreciating, lost value, and as a result of this, no doubt, exports started getting better returns. But what about imports? What about imports? Whenever the domestic currency loses value, the imports will become costlier. And when these households will start consuming the imported commodities, obviously this will fuel inflation trends. It will contribute to inflation, but more importantly, the households will be worried about rising cost of living. That was the second reason. Third reason, there are also certain concerns raised with the connections to certain fringe elements. Again, I will not get into the fringe discussion here. There are certain concerns that the political party LDP is connected to certain fringe elements which were implicated in assassination of the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe very recently. That was the third reason. Fourth reason, there was a scandal which shook the LDP, that is the Liberal Democratic Party. The scandal was basically the political party has arranged a lot of these get-together, that is the events, and for the people to participate in the events, the charges were imposed, money was collected, and it is alleged, and many people have been sentenced because of this to the prison now. Many of these politicians took this money and transferred into their personal accounts outside Japan. So when this scandal broke out, many of the politicians within the ruling party were implicated. Many of them have been sent to jail as well because of this scandal. So because of the mix of multiple factors here, the favorable factor of the Prime Minister kept on dropping. And finally, on the 14th of August, the Prime Minister stated, I will not continue as the Prime Minister anymore, and in the coming months, when there will be, right, basically the meeting of LDP, right, basically he will not be participating in the meeting, or he will not be basically standing for elections for the post of president in the LDP party, which basically means now he won't be continuing, because the president of the party becomes the Prime Minister. He won't be continuing as the Prime Minister of Japan after the meeting. So these are certain important points regarding why the Prime Minister of Japan has decided to step down. Now, two more articles in the international edition regarding Thailand. What are the important points here? Point number one, Thailand, I hope you understand, is a monarchy. That is, there is a king. King is the head of the state. And it is stated, and this is true to a very great extent, the military, the monarch, as well as the courts there, that is the judiciary there, generally are hand in glove. That is, they will try to protect their own interest. They will act as a group, they will try to protect their own interest. Monarch and military has a very high influence on judiciary there. Now, what has happened recently? Understand this carefully. The Constitutional Court of Thailand has basically held the Prime Minister, right, has held the Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra as guilty. And guilty of what? Guilty of violating certain ethical principles which are provided under the Constitution of Thailand. Certain ethical standards have been violated by the Prime Minister. And that ethical standards they are talking about, the violation of it is associated with appointment of one person into the ministry by the Prime Minister. And the problem was created because the person who was appointed by the Prime Minister was implicated in a criminal charge back before 2010. He tried to bribe certain judges, he was caught hold of, and he was given jail punishment. And when this person was appointed by the Prime Minister now in his government, the opposition political parties took it, went to the Constitutional Court, filed a case against the sitting Prime Minister. And this is not the first time that a sitting Prime Minister has been thrown out of office by the Constitutional Court in Thailand, by the way. It is actually the fourth time. So there is a fourth instance wherein the Constitutional Court has removed a sitting Prime Minister. So following the judgment of Constitutional Court, the Prime Minister, the Thaksin Shinawatra, decided to step down. Now please understand the implications here. Point number one, now there are certain doubts regarding whether the budget for the current financial year will be passed in Thailand. Point number one. Point number two, one of the reasons why this political party, right, I hope you understand, one of the reasons why this political party came to power was the announcement of certain financial assistance to people in Thailand. During the elections, the political party announced that they would be distributing 10,000 bahts to 50 million Thai people, which will provide certain assistance because post-pandemic, the people in Thailand have been struggling. The debt of the households has reached to record high level. The recovery in the economy because of pandemic, they are yet to completely recover. Even the economic activity such as car manufacturing, which is majorly done, which is one of the major economic activity in Thailand, it has also slowed down. Because the debt of the households is very high, people's demand or the demand in the market for manufactured car in Thailand has actually come down, and which has again affected the manufacturing activity, labor market, etc. So the argument here is to provide relief to the people. The announcement was done during last year elections, but now there is a doubt whether this will be fulfilled or not. Point number three, whenever you talk about Thailand elections, please understand, before the elections are conducted and the results are announced, the political party has to nominate names of certain people who will become the Prime Minister if the existing Prime Minister is removed. Right, who will become the new Prime Minister? And three names were proposed by this political party. One of the names was the daughter of the current Prime Minister, that is Petagontaran Shinawatra, right, daughter herself. Right. So now the political party has stated that the new Thai Prime Minister would be the daughter of old Thai Prime Minister. Done. So these are certain very important points regarding the article which has appeared in international page, or let's say international edition of Hindu newspaper, again overlapping with international relations as well as economic aspect. Now before I wind up the discussion, don't worry about the thank you here. Before I wind up the discussion, if you remember, while beginning the discussion I asked you one question, that is, what do you think is garlic? Is it basically a vegetable or is it a spice? That was my question. The answer to this has been given by the Madhya Pradesh High Court now. The Madhya Pradesh High Court has stated that garlic is vegetable. Please remember, garlic is vegetable. And if you are wondering, sir, what is the use of it? Why should I remember whether this is a vegetable or a spice? My dear, importance is whether this is a spice or vegetable will determine under what law this will be covered. I am pretty sure all of you heard of Agriculture Produce Market Committee, under which the state government shall decide what commodity will be sold in which market. And that actually led to a confusion as to whether garlic is a spice or a vegetable. Right. So what Madhya Pradesh High Court has stated is it is a vegetable as of now. And the reason that has been cited is it is a perishable commodity. It's a perishable commodity, right? The garlic will perish very soon. That is, it will lose out its quality. It will become useless after a couple of days. And that is the reason the High Court has ruled that it is a vegetable. Right. So these are certain important points. Interesting point, by the way, regarding the garlic as well as the other articles that I wanted to cover. Again, I reiterate myself, if you want to download the PPT, I have provided lot of points in the PPT, right, the written points as well as the type points. All you need to do is join our Telegram channel. The QR code is right here. And by the way, we want to make this initiative, that is the Hindu News Analysis as well as other initiatives, as a one-stop destination for all of your current affairs requirements. So if you like these initiatives, do hit the like button, and if you are yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Thank you. Have a great day.